We have raised our first VC round, 3.2 million euro round. What are we going to do with this money?
First of all, expanding internationally. We're making a big step into the AI era and also design a product that is at the edge of innovation.
We need to raise the level of ambition of Europe. We are already changing the lives of many. Thanks to us, they see a much bigger world. They see much bigger opportunities.
Talent is everywhere. Opportunities are centralized. So how can we build a bridge in between the best talent to those opportunities that can make these people shine and reach their full potential?
What would be the single cup that you regret the most?
Well, that's a very good question. The single one, I think, was...
Welcome once again to the Nova podcast, the podcast where we tell the stories about top talent. My name is Ramón Rodrigáñez. I'm one of the co-founders and CEOs here at Nova. And today we have a very special episode, the first time we actually record in English, and where my, let's say, co-host and conversational partner will be my co-founder and also CEO at Nova, Andrea Marino. And we have a very special podcast for you because we're going to be telling you all about our history, all about how Nova got started, all the mistakes we have made. And also we are going to share everything that has happened in the past few months where we have raised our first VC round, 3.2 million euro round with institutional investors. We're going to tell you all the failures we made in the process. It was very tough. All the learnings and what's our plan going forward and where our ambitions lie. So if you're curious to know more about Nova, if you're curious to learn more about Andrea and myself, I believe we have a very, very unique and special podcast. Andre, welcome and thank you for sharing this with me.
Thank you for sharing your magic room. I followed from Milan the many podcasts and it's really an honor. I mean, I'm emotional to be here. Many great people before me. I think role models for both myself and you. So yeah, great to be here and share with the community what we have been up to. It's been a very heavy journey, but I think we both know that the best is yet to come.
Exactly, so, I was going to say that.
Happy to dive into that.
So since it's the first time we do it in English and we might have listeners and followers that actually don't know about Nova, please just pitch about what's Nova and why are we here?
Well, that has been evolving a lot, as we'll cover later. But today we can say Nova is really that professional network for the brightest people out there. We set on this journey to go and hunt for the brightest mind. And we are now 25,000 members later. And today our vision is more crisp than ever. I think ultimately we want to meritocratize access to opportunities. I think we'll dive deeper into those stories. But today, I would say that Nova in a nutshell can be really seen as a professional network for the best people out there.
How are we different to LinkedIn, right? Because I guess whenever we talk about professional networks, I say 99 of the people listening to this podcast, they are probably users on LinkedIn and most likely not users anywhere else. Let's say professional, they use WhatsApp, Instagram, Twitter, whatever. So how are we different from LinkedIn and what's the value, right? Because in the end, I would say that most likely all of these brightest people on earth, they are all on LinkedIn already, right? Why would they use Nova?
Yeah, I think that's the key. I think, as you know, we spent so much time in understanding how to identify people. So today, the key difference is that there is a selection process to access the curated and pre-vetted community. We have been building quite slowly at the beginning with a lot of hard work and manual work under the assumption that there needs to be a filter at the beginning of this process. And today, I would say that's the most important difference, this rigorous selection process that I believe we can be very proud of because it's very holistically in the way that we don't only look for the typical CV stamps, but we go beyond that. And this means what are your drive, ambitions, aspirations, what have you achieved even younger in your life? So I think that really sets a difference between any other platform out there. And I think we can both be proud to be saying that we have built the very first professional network based on merit. And happy to keep doing that.
Exactly. And I think we both start to know because we're early in our careers that who you know determines who you can be and what can you accomplish in your professional life. And the reality is that although I'm, as you know, a power user of LinkedIn, and I think we both are, we have, I think, more than 20,000 followers each. I think LinkedIn is a super tool for many things. The reality is that today you don't get to meet great people over LinkedIn, right? That doesn't really happen because it's increasingly massive. I think it's increasingly useful to kind of follow the news, understand what's happening out there, what are the latest things happening, learn about, for instance, a lot of people will learn about our round through LinkedIn, right? And that's fantastic about LinkedIn. But you don't get to meet the people that would make you, achieve your full potential, right? You don't get to meet your partners, you don't get to meet your co-founders. Getting an employer through LinkedIn is increasingly challenging, right? So the job filter doesn't work that well.
And I would add, I think the trust element is, I'm actually, now that you talk about it, I think many of us are now used to go on ChatGPT first for asking for relevant questions, very important question about our life. Very few would go and ask on LinkedIn those questions. While what we see in Nova in those vertical groups is that people open up and ask for help on topics that you wouldn't do anywhere. And I think that is really that trust capital. It's coming from that highly pre-vetted effort that we have been doing. So
totally.
I think
one challenge that a lot of people have made to me when I pitched Nova around this meritocracy thing is, okay, but you guys then are kind of an elite, right? How do you see that? Like, are we elitist? Are we, are we elitist? I think that's the right question.
Well, if you would take merit as a criteria of elite, I would say we are. However, I don't think elite in the traditional sense of it applies to Nova. In fact, I mean, we'll go into our stories, but it was born on the assumption that talent is everywhere, opportunities are centralized. So how can we build a bridge in between the best talent, regardless of where they're starting their journey in life, to those opportunities that can make these people shine and reach their full potential? So I think we are indeed taking a snapshot of a talented individual a bit later than we wished in life. I think to be even more meritocratic, and I think we'll get there in 5, 10, 20 years, how long it takes, we don't know. But you know that we are dreaming of a foundation that can invest in teenagers around the world so that the moment we assess their talent, there hasn't been a roadblock on the way to get to their full potential. But today, I'd say Nova is not an elite at all. I think many of those people that challenge us, they might fall into the trap that indeed top talent in today's professional careers end up clustering in some industries and some firms. So there might be the tendency to think that our members are homogeneous. But the reality is that if people would take the time to dive in their personal stories, they would learn that they all come from different backgrounds, family, interest. So I think I can stand proudly behind the fact that if we're building an elite, is a merit elite. And
the reality is that the way I see it, at least, is that in every society in history, there has been an elite. If you go to communist Russia, there was an elite that was in the government and who ruled the society there, right? So the question is, it's not whether there will be elites. There will always be elites. The question is how those elites are formed. So you and I, we believe that it's better that they built on merit, right? Like, how driven you are, how talented you are, even if talent is probably a little bit genetic, that's most likely true. There's a lot of sweat into success. I think that's one part. And the reality is that I think the world will be a better place if the people who lead it are the most talented and driven. So yeah, a little bit like yourself. If we are an elite, maybe yes, I think we are, but we are challenging the way elites have been defined up until today. And today's world is really non-meritocratic. So if you're born in Milan, in Madrid, or Barcelona, and you go to a private uni, let's say ICADE, ESADE, Bocconi, your chances of making it to the best jobs are just much higher compared to born in south of Italy, actually like yourself, or Jaén, to take your place in Spain, right? So I think we are already changing the lives of many young students that join Nova from a public uni, let's say in the south of these two countries, just to take example, who, thanks to us, they see a much bigger world, they see much bigger opportunities, and they typically raise their level of ambition. And that's something we'll discuss it a bit later. But we need to raise the level of ambition of Europe in general and Italy and Spain in particular, right? I think that's if we are able to do that, I think our life would have already been worth it.
Totally. No, I think hopefully we can scale well beyond that. But I think making Europe an ecosystem, that has always been. I mean, if you look at history, the Renaissance area, I mean, Italy specifically was the center of the revolution, where at the end, I think we both agree that talent is what drives innovation and wealth. It's true that financial capital has been the key differentiating factor, but in reality, we are more and more in an era where talent is driving wealth for a country, for a continent. So, yeah, totally.
Talent allocation is one of the biggest problems to solve in the world, right? If the best people are working in the place where they are most productive, happier,
exactly,
the world will advance better and will make
totally
humankind
and I think
better.
We also, talking to many young professionals, executives, I still see a big problem with people entering careers they don't really know nothing about until the moment they get stuck maybe with a lifestyle that is very costly, so they cannot switch even when they realize they're not in the right place. So I think Nova, ultimately, I see that colliding of great people, also helping them finding the right spot in society along the way.
Totally. So before we go into the history of the company and the round, also to give a bit of context, okay, so we pitched it already. We are the professional network that connects the most talented people in the world. Our mission is, to build a more, let's say, merit-based society. I think we are always very transparent, both with our employees, but with the world about our journey. Let's give a few of the main figures of Nova, right? How big are we? How many members we have? How much revenue do we make? Are we profitable or not? Like,
I'll steal a bit of your data role. I mean, Ramon is among the two the ones that has the best number always on the top of his head. But to give you the figures, today we can be very proud of having crossed the mark of 2 million run rate, which, looking at where things started, has been a major undertaking. And I'm excited about the compounding effects that will lead this to the next level. We have a team that is a very lean team, I would say, compared to the past. We are now 35 FTs, reaching 40 end of this month. So I think we can be in that ballpark, under 50 employees still. Today, we have reached 25,000 members, meaning that, I don't know if you have the figures, but we have assessed way more than 60,000 people.
Last time I checked, I think it was over close to 100,000 or
Nova 111 candidates and all of that. So, those figures seems way bigger than we had to dream back then. In terms of the two splits, so if you take about the 2.2 million run rate today, our business is divided in between the B2B business line and the B2C business line. Today, 25% approximately is B2C. Most of it is recurring. So that's where we're going, as you know, building a more recurring, stable revenue for the company. The 75% is B2B, where we still have a component that is recurring SaaS, and a major significant one that is still service. And we are now in an exciting journey. So any members listening to this who has been through a similar one on moving from a service heavy to a fully SaaS, that's an exciting journey we are on. But I think, just to summarize, 2.2 million run rate revenues, 25,000 members, 40 employees, 75% B2B, 25 B2C.
And I think you is one of, our biggest accomplishment is that where you have actually taken the most or the biggest role, which is that our brand is quite big. Like, I think it's not, I wouldn't say it's not, I was going to say it's not common. I think it's most likely unheard of a company our size, our age, that has 100, almost 40,000 followers on LinkedIn. In total is 160 almost thousand, which is quite unique. the unicorns I admire here in Spain, let's say I admire, as you know, a lot Factorial, and I'm a big follower of it, Nick. These guys, they don't have 100,000 followers on their Factorial account, or 100 and little, no? It's not 130. So, yeah, I think that's something that I'm very proud of, and I think it explains a lot of what we are today. I think probably our biggest asset, or one of them, is the brand.
For sure. And I think while we can definitely pat ourselves on the back for a great job on the brand, I think we are quite lucky because our members speak for the brand. So it's almost as having invested into mini brand ambassadors around the world. Because as you remember, in the early days, we start seeing a trend that was insane. So the acceptance email of Nova was being screenshotted by people, was ugly back then, not even design, was a very ugly snapshot. And that was the moment
people posted up on LinkedIn
saying, I'm so excited. It's almost as if they were accepted to Harvard, no? And then looking at the profile of these people, you saw how great they were. So instantly, and even by accident, we started to build a reputation and an aspirational brand thanks to these individuals who stand for excellence, who stand for merit. So it was never us going in the street screaming, we are the best place for top talent. They were the members being our ambassadors. And that was when we introduced for the first time a beautiful certificate, which incentivized even more the shareability of that concept. I remember we crafted that sentence on the certificate to really showcase that what we stand for. It was not only professional excellence, it was merit, leadership potential. It was speaking about a person that we want to stand behind. And I think, that was one of the biggest tricks. And thanks to our members, because they are our ambassadors still to this date.
Totally. And when I meet new people or new clients, most often than not, they had met us through the LinkedIn profile of a member that had included Nova, either as a certificate or even as a professional experience. Whenever I show someone that when you go on Nova's LinkedIn page, it looks as if we had 6,000 employees, I think that's something that makes me very proud to see very brilliant people that I admire that are proud to be Novas, right? I think that's something, if everything goes south and, we don't make it anywhere, which still could be, I think the chances now are thankfully smaller. I think, that's already an accomplishment.
No, and I mean, was last week, we get a lot of weekly messages from members who Novas changed lives. And it's just a small example among the many that could be even more significant. But there was this one member who just was awarded as a winner of the Nova 111 list in Italy, who just sent me a long email full of great gratitude, saying that when he mentioned that he was a member of Nova, many doors in his life opened up, from finding that flat in Milan where suddenly roommates instantly trusted this person just because he was a part of Nova, to being offered a very prestigious role because the employers realized it.
In MBB, I believe.
Exactly. So, there are many hundreds of stories that go unnoticed, but whenever I read these emails, I really see the signaling power of the brand, which is not only kudos to me because I'm talented, it's also a signaling effect that is productive in your life because it opens a new door, right? So it's not only I celebrate myself, I'm cool, which would not be in line with our values. We're building a brand that can help you reach that next stage in life.
And exactly, and the value for the Novas that join us, in the end, when I have to summarize in a nutshell, is two things. It's signaling for your career at the time where MBAs are suffering, where the ROI of going for 2 years to Harvard is not as big as it was 20 years ago. So one, signaling, and two, connections, right? I'm going to connect you to whatever, or actually whoever will make you achieve your full potential. And as I said, it can be a co-founder, a mentor, a mentee, an employer,
anything. No, I think this was actually one of the biggest struggle of Nova. The fact that we can be useful for so many things that has taken us time to understand how do we communicate to members and potential members. And I think what we are finding now, an agreement within the team, is to talk about the power of one connection, right? So regardless of whatever is next in your life, whatever you're going after, maybe you're just changing city, you moved on the other side of the world, like a member who moved to Australia and found 5 Novas and now are his family there. We are that place where I think the probability of finding a meaningful connection is the highest in the world at the moment. And I think that is just magical.
Totally. Let's now move on to the telling a bit of the story of the company and how it all started, because although I think I'm very proud of what we are doing, and we have clarified a lot our pitch, our business model, where are we going. The reality is that 5 years ago when we started, which was exactly, I mean, we were incorporated in February 2020, so it's just 5 years and 2 months ago. We didn't have this clarity. So for whoever out there is becoming an entrepreneur,
it's a long journey.
Understand that most likely what you are starting off is not exactly, I mean, I think the merit thing, connecting bright people was there, but our business was quite different, particularly on how we made money out of this concept, right? So let's tell that story first. Like let's maybe explain how we met and how we started 5 years ago.
Yeah, I think the way we met, it's already speaking for the serendipity power of connections. I landed in Sweden. I was still a student back then. A summer internship that looked great appeared on my radar. I applied, go to Stockholm, where I started to work with Lars, our partner and co-founder. And Lars has been a successful serial entrepreneur. So he had built different companies and ecosystem.
Mainly HR tech.
Tech.
First job board of Europe.
Yeah, he founded Jobline, who sold to Monster, among many other companies. Universum was the first to create the concept of employer branding, as you know. So when I landed in Stockholm, I was, blown away by this very humble character that Lars is. Maybe he has to come to the next podcast if he's in Europe.
He should.
But there, I started off working on many different projects. So almost as a mini chief of staff, I started this internship led back then by Per, who would be instrumental in us meeting. And what Lars started off as a very career-oriented B2B headhunter / career event company that was called Nova 100, which, as you know, was the origin, a bit of the seed that brought us together. We quickly realized that scaling a headhunter wasn't really doable. It's hard to scale service-heavy businesses, though there was an inception of a beautiful idea, which is, how can we focus on the best people? And around that time, we started to imagine that a future wouldn't be based on headhunting, but rather on community. And I was still a student, so back then you want to explore as many careers as possible. So I wasn't really excited as a headhunter business, though when we started to envision a community / tech empowered business model, things started to click. And we, during that internship, scribbled and drafted some of the big ideas and concept. And this is where Per was an extreme facilitator, because after that summer internship, he went to study to Paris.
And that's where we met.
Exactly. And I went back to Italy for finishing my studies, and then 6-12 months after, we get connected.
Exactly. So exactly as you say, after that summer, Per came into Paris. I was in my second year of study there, and I clearly remember this one course. It was the only one we had in common on entrepreneurship, where we were put in the same project group, and we very quickly connected and started talking about startups and growth. And back then, I had launched this association in Spain. You remember Synapsi, that was already connecting bright students. I have always been passionate about the fact that when you connect bright people, things happen, and 1 + 1 can be more than 2. And then when I pitched this to him, this community, he said, hey, no way, because I'm working for this Nova 100 headhunter. And, we are starting to see how can we scale this globally. And we believe that, a headhunting business on top of a tech-enabled community can really be something different, right? And then we met. We worked on the, let's say, MVP of Nova for 2-3 years here in Spain, where we transform that Synapse association into Nova Spain. And then I was at that point, I was brave enough to finally leave my comfy job at BCG. That's something that my mother still, I think she has started to understand probably in the last couple of months with the round and everything. I think she got a bit more, with the podcast, she got a bit more confident. But that was a tough decision. Actually for you as well, because I remember that at that time when we decided to launch, you were about to leave large ecosystem, right? So it was either we go all in and we transform this Nova 100 into a tech company, or we go do something else.
Totally. No, and I think there is a merit into having taken that leap of faith. I think we believed in that vision, though it wasn't as clear as it is today. And the MVP was a beautiful part of the journey where we learned doing things that don't scale what we wanted to build. And I think the key lesson today, I think there is the tendency to think of success as something you build overnight. It seems like the scale-ups who raise money, they did it over one year. There are some incredible ideas who take off like fire, and that's beautiful. But the reality is that if you want to build a meaningful company that stands the centuries, that's what we are up to. It's going to take time, and starting from that non-scalable way of understanding what is the definition of top talent, how do we measure, how we do this at scale, how do we bring people together, small dinners, big events. We have tried it all. I think a lot of that knowledge is still with us today, and thankfully we trusted the process.
Let's say to put it a bit in a time frame, so in the MVP, which is 2016 through 2019, we're basically running a community on a Facebook group. Exactly. Which at some point we move into a Hivebrite, which is a platform as a service, very cool for communities. But we have a totally non-scalable service business, but we are running on a community and putting up on a headhunting business. And we see that makes some kind of sense. We quickly, as you remember, get BCG, McKinsey as clients. We get some good brands in line. We decided to incorporate the new entity in 2020. And if you remember, it was 9 months in between incorporating and Williams, our CTO, arriving, right?
Exactly.
Which actually very excited to say that he's back.
Yeah.
We can say that today. Very proud. Because he left for a year, but now I think the project has, again, I think the potential to also match his qualities, right? And his ambitions. So it was 9 months where we're still running a service business. It was actually COVID, so let's say. And then, a very long path until we understand that although we had this tech-enabled community, the service business was not going to work. And I think we took a lot of iterations on trying to iterate on the operating model, but we're still selling mostly services. And none of our products was neither recurring nor at this high margin, right? High margin, low labor.
Exactly.
In hindsight, I'm very proud of what we have done. But if I could do it all over again, we were very slow. Like the reality is that as first-time founders, we made lots of mistakes. And then we can summarize a bit the insights. But it was a very long journey until, today we can say that finally we are mostly a tech business, although we still have a decent service part. But clearly we know what's the way to be a fully tech company.
Exactly.
And that's why the VCs have come in, right? But it was not easy.
No, and it's also why Williams is back, is because the tech ambition now is reaching a level that I'm personally very excited about, that puts us on a global scale into a competitive arena where we can lead the way. So, It's
quite competitive, actually, because if you think about it, when people use our app, they are comparing it against the UX of LinkedIn, WhatsApp, So other social, there's very few social media companies born out of Europe. I can only think of Be Real, and probably nothing else. So if we're able to pull up this one from Europe, headquarter, Madrid, Milan, I think that's something we can hopefully be very proud in a few years.
For sure. I think the way up until here has been already putting us on the map, and I think all over Europe, Nova as a space. Now our ambition is to bring this in every corner of the world, and I think we have many years of learnings on our back. many mistakes still ahead of us, but I think it's an exciting one.
Let's talk about those before we go onto the round, just to finish up kind of the history. What would be the single fuck up that you regret the most?
Well, that's a very, very good question. I would say, I mean, we can mention many. The single one, I think, was to start expanding the business before we even had a clear sign of product market fit. I think we were just out of a crowdfunding equity raise. We'll cover that later. We had raised more than 500,000 euros, which for the time was a good amount of money, which we invested heavily on hiring new people, already entering Italian market, which in hindsight was a great decision because of the similarity with the Spanish culture. But we spent way too much money hiring the wrong type of skills for the wrong type of
talents,
purpose.
marketing.
So I think it's almost, in hindsight, it's like a rookie mistake, because you read it in the ABC of doing a startup, and you read don't scale things that you're not ready to. But when you are in it, the energy, the enthusiasm, also the bias towards the things that work, I think give you a bit more comfort than you should have. So I would say scaling when we were not ready was a big fuck up for sure. What about you? Which one would you pick?
I think I would have picked that one. I think second to that is probably that I think we haven't been super good at fundraising. If I had to score us as founders on many different things, I would say we can be pretty proud of how good we are as leaders and culture-wise and so on. I think we have very bright people in the company that are very happy working for us. I think we have decent sales skills, product skills. But I think fundraising, we haven't been very good. And if there's one mistake I particularly regret, is that before our round in 22 was actually closed, we had already hired kind of 10 people, right? We have hired engineers, head of people, actually. We kind of gave that round as, it's done deal. And I still remember that one day when the guy of this potential investor that unfortunately we cannot mention calls me and tells me, hey, next week we're not signing and we have to see if we can save this round. And I was like, I think that's the closest to
death.
Of
the company.
To death of the company for sure. Because if you remember, I don't know how we even paid the salaries of the next 2 months. Like, it was really crazy. We have suffered to pay salaries more times, but this time we really didn't know how to do that. And also the fact that we had, made promises to people that we cared about and were great professionals and joined our team. And, we couldn't save that round, right? And the reality is that there's two types of layoffs. There's layoffs of people that are not, let's say, not working well. And it's tough to lay someone off always. But I have, at least myself, grown to understand that it's for the best of the company. But when you lay off someone that has done a good job, 6 months after the person came in, or even 3 months, there was one person that we had to let go only 3 months after. I think I really felt bad. I think that was a big mistake, and I think that's something I'm really not proud about. And my recommendation to anyone that's raising money is that until the money doesn't hit the bank, it's not done.
I can remember those days, and the worst of it all is that we were at the Big Bang, our annual conference. We were ready to celebrate it. To our defense, there is always a bad luck element. We thought we had it all, but now, as you say, until the money is in the bank, nothing is certain. But
we didn't, and let's actually then maybe tie in a bit with the history of fundraising and this round. So basically, our fundraising was, let's say, our co-founder Lars put in a bit of money when we started in 2020. Thank God, because otherwise we wouldn't have survived COVID.
Yeah.
There was nobody hiring, and that was our only revenue model. Then we did a pre-seed of about $1 million with crowdfunding from the members, Lars himself again, and a few small
XOR seeds from Italy.
extra seed, and and that's it. Then we have done a couple of rounds with angels in between to, at the times where VCs were close to us, because basically in between the pre-seed and today's round, the big round was supposed to happen in 2022, but it didn't happen.
And was the best time to raise money in the last decade.
Exactly, and I think as
we missed the window.
Beginning of 22, the tech stocks start to go down. The VCs start to close the windows, and then our rounds get canceled on September 2022.
Exactly.
And since then, we didn't have a scalable business model. We didn't have many profits. We were too big of a team. As you said, we had hired way too many people. We were just throwing people at problems instead of solving them with technology or something scalable. I think we arrived to something like 60 people, which was by all metrics too much, too big for what we were doing. So we had those angels kind of saving us for real in 23, beginning of 24. And then finally now, this round of 3.2 million led by GDP Venture Capital with BY Ventures and also a few business angels that finally, give us some space, some breathing air, because it's been tough. Like, I know you haven't slept well as myself, but it's been tough to sleep when you are always kind of paying salaries on the very last day. You don't even know how you were doing it.
No, and as you know, we have these Google Sheets where we have been running our cash flow every week.
We started it in 22 to live until the round of 22.
It's still called, I think, cash flow before whatever the round. It still has
the seed round. Cash flow before seed round. And the reality is that the seed round has come kind of actually almost 3 years after we started the Google Sheet. Which is
it's a nightmare. We joke that we'll need to print and burn it, but it has been, I would say, also a lesson in being more frugal, understanding the value. I think as you build a startup in those days, you have the tendency to think that hiring more people is exciting, is something to be proud of. I think we have learned a hard lesson of why profitability is important. And
it's just a vanity metric, the number of employees. Today we have members such as the lovable guy. I think they are 20 and they are 10 times as big as we are, right?
No, it's the opposite. The lower, the better. I think going to us as co-founders, not having you in this journey would have been impossible. Like just having the faith and the strength to fight alone, I think I wouldn't do it.
So I think the solo founder, I think it has been really tough. I think it's been the toughest professional challenge I've ever faced. And I don't think it's going to get easier as we try to scale bigger. But hopefully the amount of stress that low cash brings to the table, hopefully we won't be in that situation again.
It didn't allow us to think beyond the 3 months horizon. It didn't allow us to think big, to also spend quality time with the managers, invest in our people. That's why I'm very excited, because the next phase is a phase where we can be closer to our people. They will experience a company that can take even more care of them.
And closer to the business, because the reality is that, basically we have been fundraising, I would say, for longer than a year, because already end of 23, we were already needing cash. 24, we got something, but it was not enough. So in reality, we have been pitching and meeting investors for, I would say, almost a year and a half, which is very long. And basically this money and this new phase of the company, I think it's really exciting. I think we have never been as excited. We just come back from the management retreat, and now we have the team, the resources. We know what we're doing. We have already, let's say, product market fit on the B2C. We know where we want to go on B2B to also find product market fit on the scalable part. So, I think it's as exciting as ever. Share a bit about this round. No? So it's 3.2 million. What are we going to do with this money? Why is it important? And what do we want to accomplish in the next, let's say, couple of years, 25, 26?
So I think first of all, it's going to be the first time we have that peace of mind. And I mean, just to make it into buckets, the first one, it's going to be expanding internationally, with our next big city being UK, but even more exciting, now seeing more than 25 city leaders across the world starting to create local communities. It's teaching us that a scalable community doesn't mean centralizing a lot of the processes. So having a bit of financial capital to boost our brand presence in those countries, being behind our city leaders from the HQ, thanks to better content, better brand assets, and so on, is going to be key. We're making a big step into the AI era, and with that also our technology investment is gonna raise, not without, of course, learning from the past, so with our frugal mindset, but adding a few engineers. You know that tech has been our biggest bottleneck in these past few years. So very excited to have a head of AI.
Our dear Jesus, also
Jesus.
Nova, of course.
Exactly. We are preaching. I mean, we are hiring from our members when we can. So Jesus is gonna bring a lot of knowledge that we'll need to scale, and also design a product that is at the edge of innovation. So yeah, tech and international expansion is going to be the biggest buckets, and in each one, of course, we can break it down into more subtle projects. But yeah, those are the two biggest.
Totally. I think for me is on the B2C. Let's say we have found product market fit. We need to find how we scale this globally. So we need to find our levers of growth, CAC, expansion model, pricing is something we're working on a lot. But let's say that we have a product that we know it works. Like if you are a top talented individual and today you join Nova, you're going to find pretty cool things happening there for you that don't happen elsewhere. And contrary on the B2B, we're a bit earlier, right? The business is bigger, as you explained before, it's almost 3 times as big, but it's still 25-75 no SaaS, non-SaaS as a non-SaaS service. And there I'm very excited about finding product market fit, right? So for the first time, we're going to have resources dedicated to build a great B2B product so that any recruiter out there in the world can hire the best talent through us and not necessarily through our, let's say, our people, our talent agents, right? Which is a business that we'll keep, but hopefully we'll be representing a smaller part of the revenues going forward.
And I think even though it's not the main objective, but having learned the importance of running a profitable business, you know that we have had month of EBITDA positivity at Nova already in 2024. So with this round, we're excited to see that cash flow positivity will be reached somewhere in 2026. So we still have a year and a half ahead of us.
Exactly. What the Excel says is that we don't need to raise more money. We are default alive. I think that's the trendy way to say it in this startup ecosystem. And then time will tell, right? If we want to really go play the Champions League US, most likely we'll need some future capital injection. But if the business goes so well that we don't need it, I think we are very happy at running we're here in the very long term, so we're happy to run a profitable company hopefully from next year.
And I think what has changed significantly also on the cash side of things is that with the membership being a business where things are paid up front, if we crack the code of having a cash cycle where the membership becomes a driving factor.
And same on the B2B, right? Because on the SaaS model, if you're building an enterprise or let's say big company size and you can charge yearly, I think that makes a big difference. Let's move on to the fundraising itself, right? I just said, okay, it was 18 months. It was very tough. I was checking our shared Google Drive where we share the pitches and so on and the Notion. I think we have pitched to over 250 funds, which is really tough, and it was very, very hard. With some of them, we have actually talked twice. Where I talked maybe end of 23 and then again end of 24, and most of them said no. What are your learnings of this fundraising, and what would you do differently in the next one?
Well, no, it's so much. I mean, we can bounce off learnings. I think for me, the fact that we had this process almost as a default ongoing thing didn't put us in control in the conversation. The scarcity element wasn't there. We couldn't set timelines and deadlines. We lost track. We weren't really building the FOMO. No? At the end, we know, or everybody knows that a VC is playing a game of turning down as many as possible because, you know, actually you covered that very well in a podcast episode. So having that long period with no deadlines has been definitely no-go. So whenever you are fundraising, you have to have clear deadlines and you know how to build pressure and get to the first term sheet and use that to trigger the final decision. And that should be in a defined interval of time.
Which is a few weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
Typically, not years.
Yeah, exactly. Typically, let's say 8 weeks at most. For us has been a default going process, which has, of course, reduced that exciting feeling that you could create. And also you get tired as a founder, so you're starting to perceive it from not a desperate, but almost, where you lose confidence. And it's true that the key metrics is that you only need one yes. It's also for the founder, it's a no game until you need one or two. In this case, 250, 125 to get to one yes. We had 2 great funds. So at least I would say starting with the big numbers in mind, and until you get 100 no's, you're still in the game, you know, and keep going with the same hopeful mindset.
Yeah, and I think we could have structured the process much better because in the end, also because it lasted longer, but we were also in the business, right? And I think that at least one of us would have had to do this full-time and as only focus. And the problem is that it started to last so long that we needed to be in the business because otherwise the business was not running, and therefore we put in less time, so we built less pressure and we had less control. So to me, the learning is that this is a sales cycle. You have to be in control of the conversation. You have to build FOMO. You should not be racing until you are, until you have the control, and you have to prepare it. So you have to prepare a momentum where you talk to a lot of people, get them interested, but you say you're not fundraising.
Exactly.
And then suddenly you say, go.
Yeah.
There was this one podcast on Itnic where the guy of 30 pitch it fantastically, and I think that's exactly the way. So you build that FOMO, and then hopefully you plan in as many, let's say, calls with VCs in 1 or 2 weeks, and then you hopefully get the first term sheet quickly. And it's true that when we got our first term sheet, then things suddenly changed.
Exactly.
We were in control. It's true that from term sheet to closing, it's been tough. It's been much longer than what we would have wished. But the reality is that from the moment we got that term sheet, we have been in control, and it has been a much more pleasant journey that very long dessert that never ended before that.
100%. And while, of course, we have been fundraising in some of the worst times to fundraise, I'd say there is always a process improvement that will determine the success of the entire fundraise. So,
yeah, in our case, it was bad timing.
Yeah,
bad metrics, because after the good metrics we had in 22, the recession started. Bad metrics, bad business model, non-AI. Like, it was very tough.
I mean, we of course we haven't been as good at fundraising. It's true that we were not presenting the typical VC case, and as the metric and the product and the scalable part, the B2C recurring started to give great strong metrics. Of course, that showed into also the interest.
Yeah, I think what has saved us or made us make it is, first, a lot of determination. Like you and I, we just did whatever, wouldn't give up. And I think that's the only thing that kept us here. And I do think that we have some things that are non-typical of many of these AI SaaS tools that are, or the typical SaaS that got funded a couple of years ago. That are very unique to our model. And when we found the funds that truly understood the power of this, is that in a world where tech is ever easier to build and where intelligence is available everywhere, what defense businesses is going back to basics, which is brand and network effects, right? And we have both, to an extent that very few companies in the European ecosystem have them. And that's what gives me hope that we can build a legendary company in the very long term. it's going to take time because our network effect is much slower than the typical social media. So there's a selection process that makes it basically we cannot just accept anybody.
Exactly.
But as soon as we have, let's say, breached that gap or that threshold where those network effects start to play in, today it's very hard to replicate Nova in Europe. Like whoever wants to try it, go ahead. It's not easy. Like it's very, very hard.
And I think to play on a bit on the AI speculation, the post AGI world, if that will ever get to that, it's a world where network and personal connection is even more valuable. So I think as time goes further, the need for top talent in organization is going to increase even more, because one top talent with the right tools can be infinitely more productive. And second, network and meaningful connection is not replaceable. So I think we sit on two trends that even with AI should accelerate in our favor.
Exactly. And this top talent thing is even more important at a time where demographics are shifting. And then in 20, 30 years, there will be way fewer people in working age. So yeah, I think that's what makes us excited. Let's say continue kind of looking forward. If we record this again here at this podcast, hopefully here with our friends from Cabina in 5 years, what would we be proud about? Like what has happened in this 25 to 2030? Where are we, and what would you be proud about?
I mean, if we dream big, which has been always our principle, the big ambition, I've no doubt to think that we've done the right choices. Nova by then will be in the millions of members across the world, 5, 10, I don't know. I mean, I think we can put the limit. To be frank, going back to our vision, I'd love to have clear cases of people that being born out of nowhere can be here with us, maybe sitting next to us here, telling the story of how Nova transformed completely their outlook in life. I think by then we would have a Nova Foundation 100%. Most likely a few thousands of young teenagers would have been scholared by the Nova Foundation to study in great schools for them, or whatever the school's definition will be in 5 years from now. And at the same time, I would say having that really global presence where Latin American meet British talent, co-creating the next big innovation, like having that flow at a massive scale. It's maybe a big vision that I really think we can celebrate in 5 years from now. So yeah, I think that's quite a good achievement.
Totally. Yeah, hopefully by then, I think that we have now a few cases of companies being born out of Nova, but hopefully it will be actually much bigger companies than Nova itself being born out of connections from the network, right? And hopefully, a very good percentage of those 5 million members or however many we have find their jobs, their co-founders, their mentors, whatever they need on their professional careers through us, right? I think that's a beautiful vision. And I really hope that we are still leading the boat, right? Like, if you ask me, of course, if we get a crazy offer, we might sell the company in the meantime. But I'm here very long term, so I really hope that we can bring this company public. I think it will be benefits to bringing the company public from the B2C perspective and the credibility it gives us. So yeah, we have to work a lot in these 5 years.
No, for sure. And I think as you know, my dream is that out of Nova, you can build so many businesses starting from the same brand. From, we were joking in the car, but not really joking about investment vehicle or investment club or even co-working or whatever's, once you have the most valuable asset of the world, which is human capital, then I think we can even take maybe a side step and build another small business that can grow into another big one. So we'll see in 5 years where we are. Hopefully we are back here and we'll tell what has happened.
Last on this going forward, there's now this Project Europe project actually had just been launched. And I think Europe is starting to wake up. Finally, no, we have been having this almost imposter syndrome against the Americans. I don't know in your case, but for me, one of the big ambitions I have with Nova is that we can build a global player from here, and that Europe can be leading the game again in tech, and in this case professional networking, which is something that hasn't happened, unfortunately, right? And I think we have to also do a lot of PR. We have to be more present, giving our opinions, and we have to try to move the direction of politics actually to a different place where they are today. Because unfortunately in Europe, we are only doing regulation. We're caring about the things that don't matter. We're only trying to, for instance, in Spain, I don't know if you know this, but we're the first country in the world to regulate AI, right? And we have 0 players that are doing great AI in Spain. And we have rappers and so on, but we don't have any LLM builders. But we are regulating AI, right? And that's totally the wrong approach. And I hope we can be a referent in this space, and also connect the referents in the European tech ecosystem, so we change the outlook on European economy, because otherwise we are quite doomed.
No, for sure. And I think once again, the biggest asset and our principle number one of being members advocate, I think it's a matter of organizing the thoughts and expertise, and with that leading the way, shaping the opinions, starting from a position of expertise and merit. And to be honest, as maybe millennials, we have lost a bit of love in the political world. When we talk about politics in Italy, it's always a bit of an old business that speaks corruption, while in reality is maybe the most aspirational place where a top talent can drive strategic decisions. So
it's the best way to have an impact in the world, most likely.
Yeah, in the long term,
people,
for sure.
Few people actually
exactly.
of Nova actually
yeah.
go politics, and that's really unfortunate.
Exactly. And if we can claim that space of Nova being the ecosystem of the best talent around the world, and being based in Europe, which historically has been a place where networks of great people and civilization started as they spread around the world. I think it's a beautiful picture to have in our minds, for sure.
Totally. And one last question on the future or area of debate is, in this AI era, how likely are we all to lose our jobs?
Well, that's very hard questions. I'd say it's always controversial, because the typical claim is that more jobs will be created than are lost. At least that's what you can read in the headlines. There are comparisons to the Industrial Revolution. And however, at this point, I'm skeptical myself, because it's the first time that two in revolution are happening. There is an intelligence revolution where the training and learning loops have never been as fast, and the reasoning ability starts to be in the machine, while when you automatized a production line, there was a certain limit to what that machine was able to do. Now the fact that you have agents who can learn while you sleep and develop a decision-making ability pose important question where I have no answers. I do believe that, going back to the point I made before, there will be jobs that will be lost and there will be jobs that will be created, for sure. I think even more so, the talent with the highest merit and the highest experience will be even more valuable. Because to add value in an economy where 99% of the value, both operational and strategic, can be created and trained, to find your space,
you have to be on top of the pyramid.
Exactly.
Right?
So top talent, if today by a McKinsey study it's 8 times more productive, we're looking at a scenario where it's going to be maybe 100 times, because you are an orchestrator of agents and ecosystems, most probably. So if I would say what I feel based on the opinion I formed over these past few months, is complex to take an affirmative truth, but I do see a world where many jobs will be lost and in 15, 20 years, maybe the effect will be net negative. I think more jobs will be lost than will be gained.
But the outlook is good for the Novas.
It's good for the Novas.
But not good for the world.
And then we will challenge the concept of a capitalistic system based on human labor, which is not necessarily negative. I studied classical studies, as you know, and in the ancient Greek, you had a component of slavery in society that took a lot of the dirty work of maybe a class of thinkers that back then were philosophers, artists. And now, luckily, we don't need humans to be in those low, very time-consuming, physical-intensive type of activities. So I don't know if there is a renaissance where suddenly you can design your life based on arts and philosophy, and we can start discussing atoms back again, So I'm excited about the future. I even though I say the net negative effect, I don't think there would be sort of, if you look at it from a happiness perspective, I think the world, if we manage the right things right, would be in a better shape. But I don't know the scientific answer to.
Totally. No, nobody knows. And I think it's we disagree a bit, but I love your approach, and I cannot counter argue you with a lot of arguments. Let's move to a final part of the interview, because we have talked a lot about Nova, our past, our future, but we haven't talked about us at all. I think people are also eager to know, okay, who is behind this thing? Are these a couple of pijos, as we say in Spanish, or where are these guys coming from? So yeah, I can start maybe myself, and then you give your background. But we come from different backgrounds. So, in my case, as you know, I'm industrial engineer. I come from a fantastic family. I was given a lot of choices in life. I went to a private school, private uni, and I think in those spaces, meritocracy was easy to understand because we were all very lucky and we had our, let's say, needs covered. And it was easy to understand that those who worked the hardest and were more driven and more talented, we had the best grades, and we, let's say, went ahead in life. And I think that that's something that whenever then I moved to France, I started to see to uni actually, but also to France, that this was not the case everywhere in the world, and that a lot of the people were not given the same opportunities in life. I think that changed my mind into, okay, it's easy to understand meritocracy when you are given the opportunities, but a lot of the people are not given the opportunity, so we have to level the playing field as much as possible so that true meritocracy can prevail, right? I did my studies, as you know, ICAI, then France a couple of years, then Colombia to do my master's. And then before joining BCG and then finally Nova, I had to make this big decision of, okay, do I do my career in the US or do I move back to Spain? And then luckily I made probably the best decision of my life, which was to put my current wife and mother of Ramon and our future daughter, Sofia, ahead of my own, let's say, professional career, or more than my career, my salary in the short term, and came back to Spain and started at BCG. So yeah, I think that's a bit of my story that most of our members don't know about. What about yours?
Yeah, I think just to add a bit of that, I think it's to your story. I think it's, while it's definitely a privileged start, you are among the hardest working people I know, and I think maybe in a parallel universe, even if you had started in a less privileged background, I have no doubt you would be here today. And maybe that drive and example was in the family. I know your father has been a great role model to you, but I don't want to remove the credits because I know how hard you've worked. And kudos to the amazing journey, and it's been an inspiration also for me. And in my case, I think I also come from a very privileged background when it comes to having a loving family and being born in the top 1% globally of access to clean water, safety, roof, and the best food I could have. Though it's true that my background as such is more from a more average class, low, maybe tendency to low, I would say, in terms of income. My fathers were not graduated. My grandfathers had the third grade of elementary school, but that I think was a starting in my life where I was grounded into values that still to this day we relate to and we are passing on into the company, the simplicity of life, appreciating the small things. And I think one of the greatest privilege I had was to be born in a family where particularly my mom has taught me a lot about the power of dreaming big. And when I was 18, by accident, my maths teacher in high school tells me, Andrea, you seem to be someone with high intuition. Why don't you try the Bocconi tests? Bocconi was a prestigious institution, and from the south of Italy, it was seen as the Mecca for students. So this is where I think for me, the aha moment in how the opportunities you access change your life was the moment I arrived in Milan. And suddenly I could go and for free listen to CEOs of the biggest companies who came into the campus. I remember the CEO of Vodafone, Vittorio Colao. I was 19 and started to talk about leadership and global companies. And for me, it was life-changing because I grew up in a family where we never spoke about business at the table at dinner, right? I did business at Bocconi. I had the chance to travel as well significantly. I studied in the US, Urbana-Champaign. Then I went to Chile. I did an internship in Los Angeles. So I'm very thankful because I was financially supported into those choices. I financed my studies at the master thanks to a bank scholarship, which I paid my last rent, my last payment on a few months back. And yeah, I think I really saw the university as an elevating experience. And with Nova, I think where we find a great meaning is that it can be an elevating platform for most people, regardless whether they go to Bocconi or Harvard or wherever they go to study. Because once you access Nova, you have all you need to reach your full potential. A network of great people, inspiring content that is top-notch, access to career everywhere around the world. So yeah, that's I think we cannot be considered pijos for sure. Definitely privileged and lucky to be born in a place where nothing was missing. But yeah, this is why we want to give back, I think, and build a magnificent company.
One of the questions I typically ask the host here that I would like us to reflect a little bit before we end is around values. And we always discuss values in the company with our employees, and we always say that values define people. Let's talk about ours, like yours and mine. What would be your core values that you try to live up to and that define who you are today, and why you do what you do? I think that's the key question.
Yeah, no, I think my values have been changing over time, but I think there are a few core values that I go back to. So one, it's related to empathy, and it comes from a bit of my personal story where up until the moment I didn't start to be closer emotionally to some members of my family, it was hard to relate to the struggles they've been through, particularly to my mom, as you know. And empathy as being part of my person since I was 20. I think I do my best to be an empathetic leader to the people in the company, and that value has shaped my understanding of leadership and life. The second, inspire. I think it's a value that resonates more and more. And I think on myself, I saw how an inspiring moment can change your life. You go to a speech, you get inspired, your brain change gets unlocked, you go out and you do something meaningful. And I think being inspiring and use also Nova as a platform for us to inspire people who might be locked in a reality that they can switch just if they want to. It's something that drives me every day. And the third one, I'd say, I would say forgiveness has also been a big value of mine. And I think we sometimes hold on to mistakes of other people. Sometimes even our mistakes, we bring them on ourselves. And that baggage becomes heavy at some point. And not until you forgive, you lose that weight and you can really feel free again, right? So empathy, inspiration, and forgiveness, I would say at this moment are the three core values. Curious to yours.
You know them, but I would just to mention two, because meritocracy could be one for sure, but to pick two different. For me, one of them is clearly family. I think our family has been always very united and has been key to who I am. And if I'm here, is because I've always been super supported at home. Like my parents have always been the ones that believed more in me, in my potential, and my sisters as well. And now with Sofia, Ramon, no, and soon hopefully Ines, I think we're that's a big project of mine. No, I have Nova, but probably first comes the small family. And then second, I would say responsibility. And you know this, like I've always felt very privileged by, the background that we were discussing, by having, the potential to do a lot of things. I was a very good student from the very beginning. I was a good athlete. I was good at many things. And I have the belief that good people need to do good things for the world. And my father told me once this parabola, as we say in Spanish, so this tale about the talents, that the more talents you're given, the more you're asked for. And hopefully, my dream is that I can give back a lot to the world, because I feel very happy and very privileged of what I have in my life. So
you're already doing it. So
we have to do even more. Cool. So let's close with seven. The seven. There's an eighth one, but it's in someone that would be invited to the podcast. So let's close with the other 7 questions that I typically ask our guests here. And the first one is a book that maybe each of us would recommend to someone listening to the podcast. So it can be on professional development, on psychology, whatever.
Yeah, I think this book is very special because you recommended it to me first. And I think the first that came to mind among the many books, I would say, is The Almanac of Naval. And Ravikant is one of the founders of AngelList and has been a tremendous entrepreneur. But what I liked about that book specifically is that it crosses the perspective on wealth and happiness with business. And while there are many excellent business books, I think it has merged 3 important aspects of life. And I loved it. So thank you for recommending the first place.
If I cannot recommend that one, I would pick another one. I love the Principles one by Ray Dalio. So if someone that listens to it hasn't read it, it's a fantastic book on how to live a principled life, both at work and at home. What purchase of €100 or less has had a bigger impact in your life recently?
Great question. Well, that's a very recent one. To celebrate the round, I bought myself a Lego Ferrari car
for $100.
Yeah, it was a bit less, 100. Yeah, around that figure. And I think it brought me back into a sort of kid creative mode where in the weekend I closed in and built this Lego car. I always been super passionate about building stuff. I started with Meccano. I don't know if you had this in Spain. In Italy was a few small things. I remember it was my one of the most appreciated Christmas gift when I was a kid. And just doing that little gift to myself, it was like gifting the child that is in me. So nice. Yeah, I loved it.
My case, I think it was the Kindle. I had it once, but now I have it again. And since I have Kindle, I'm reading much more. And I'm, again, getting, Naval actually recommends that, no? I'm getting, again, passionate about reading, and I'm able to read every night. I built that habit already. So the Kindle is fantastic because, for instance, now when we travel was very useful. What's the best investment you have made in time, energy, or money?
Well, I'm tempted to say two, but starting off from energy and time, I've been lucky. I would say that very early on in my life, in my first exchange, so I was 20 years old, I started off with writing and journaling. Now it's very popular and is recommended. It started off as a gift from a friend who said, "You're going to travel, write a few thoughts." And I discovered that I love doing that. So having invested time to consistently, even once a month in period of time, not every day, to write down thoughts has built a repository of thoughts and observation of the past 10, 15 years of my life, which I'm very grateful for, which I think leads to a lot of self-awareness that I'm very grateful.
Totally. I've learned a lot of self-awareness from you, and I think that journey has definitely an impact. In my case, I would say I think it was the ambition to go to the US, because it was not easy and not demanded. I had my offer for BCG. I could have simply lived life a little bit more comfortably. But I got a bit jealous of my French friends that went to Kian, for instance, that you know about, is a Nova member that went to study to Stanford, Harvard, MIT, Columbia. I was like, okay, if these guys are able to go, like, why wouldn't I? So taking all that time, that effort, it was complex. I had to get the Fulbright scholarship. Like, nothing was easy, but that investment of time kind of opened the world for me. So when you get to the US and to these American universities, people there are not more talented than us by any chance. Actually, the best students there were the French and me, most likely, in terms of grades. But the reality is they have just much bigger ambitions than Europeans and Spanish or Italians in particular. So I think that was an eye-opening to then not being okay with building a Spanish, not even European company. I think we want to build a global company, and if we cannot, then we'll try another one, right?
Unlocking.
I think that unlocked a lot of ambition inside me. Can you share any kind of strange or kind of different habit that you have? Curious.
Different habits, yeah. So I think as a habit that is strange, beside the writing, which is not as strange, I think I'm somebody who often ends up not daydreaming, but I'm somebody who takes time sometimes to look somewhere in the empty space and let the train of thoughts go. So I'm someone who has been a lot into meditation, as you know, but that feeling of not doing nothing and don't feel stressed about it has become a habit of mine, where I think I've become more thoughtful. And yeah, I think I find myself quite frequently just wandering, and it's a weird habit, but I find some fulfillment in it.
I reflected a lot on this one because I ask it on every podcast, and I don't feel to have very strange habits. Maybe one that I do that people don't understand, but simply about of my passion for football and Real Madrid, is that whenever Real Madrid is playing and I cannot watch it, I do my best to really not know what happened in the game, and I watch it later, right? Which I guess I think guess more people do that, but this might be a bit strange. What belief, behavior, or habit has had the biggest impact in your life in the last 3, 4, 5 years?
Belief, behavior, or habit?
In your case, probably, I mean, between journaling and meditation.
No, yeah, I would say that on the belief side, reconnecting to the topic of being born with a mother that really shaped me with the belief that everything is possible. I think that in the toughest days of Nova and also personal phases of my life, the train habit of knowing that this is just temporary and always being able to force, it's almost a weakness to the extreme, but forcing myself to know that a much better, a much brighter future is just around the corner. Is a habit. My brain has been trained as a belief. I was 12, 13 when my mom a bit naively was sharing The Secret, this very commercial way of telling you your mind can do anything. But in that little kid, I think he planted a seed that today has been a beautiful belief that has helped me a lot, I would say.
Totally. I think you are an optimist.
Yeah, for sure.
And you need that to be an entrepreneur. I think in my case, I've recovered a more consistent approach to sports. Like whenever I do sports on a regular basis, I just feel better. And it's easy when you're an entrepreneur and you're busy to, let's say, not care about yourself. And then you prove empirically how, if you let's simply put it a little bit less time to working and a bit more time to you, then suddenly working you're more productive, and then the whole cycle accelerates, right? But I always have to resist that temptation to do, let's say, 1 hour more of work and put in 1 hour more for me, because that hour for me then doubles my happiness and productivity.
Hopefully it will be easier after the round.
Hopefully. What bad pieces of advice do you often hear in the entrepreneurial ecosystem?
That's a very good question. I think maybe you want to start on this one if you have it ready on the top of your head.
I would say that there's still a little bit of the vanity metrics around both the size of the team, which is starting to change, and we were the first to be on that, and second, to the size of the round, because a very big round typically requires a big valuation, and that puts a big hurdle on the team. I think in that sense, with this round, we are feeling happy because we do believe our company is going to be worth much more very soon. So the fact that you always seek the bigger round for just a much bigger valuation, I've seen a lot of people that has simply not worked for them, and they are closing their companies. And and it's also a mistake we did at the very beginning, right? Our first round was probably too pricey, and then we had to reduce the price, and that's tough. That's not fun for anybody. So don't raise. I mean, you raise more money than you need, maybe a little bit, but careful with the valuation and those liquidation preference and so on, because those kill companies very easily.
I agree. No, I think one, I was thinking of that, but also I think the fact of raising funds, sometimes it becomes something to be proud in itself, which I disagree with, in the sense that it's always a mean to an end. And I think we have been in a moment where raising a round in itself was an end. And I think there are companies that can bootstrap in an AI era for much longer before raising funds. So a bit like you said, raise fund when is needed and when you have proven the metrics, if you can. Of course, if you are in a very capital intensive business, hardware and all of that, it's almost impossible. But if you are building software, I think your way to MVP today is much faster. And raising early, it's just stupid, because you're giving away too much for too little. So I would say that could be something that I...
Totally. And last but not least, how would you like to be remembered?
Well, I think on this one, I go back to my roots. I would say a caring father and husband, a great friend that is loyal, and an empathetic leader.
I think it's a great summary. I think in my case, I do first believe that we will not be remembered, most likely. Hopefully Nova is something that outlasts ourselves. I think that would be one of the biggest accomplishments. But I think those that will remember me will hopefully be my wife, my children, my friends. And so a good person that tried to do good things for the world, and someone that you had a good time with. I think that would be more than...
And a great co-founder.
Cool, Andre. Well, it was a pleasure. I think it was the best podcast, the most different one we have had here. Thank you for all the effort during these 5 years. And let's do something big.
No, thank you, Ramon, for having me. It's been a pleasure. I think we should do this more often. And
exactly.
Thanks for having me here.
Thank you, everybody, and see you next week.
Bye.